Hi, Andrei. Now, the surname, I will never be able to pronounce it. So, would you help me out with the pronunciation?
Yeah, sure. Cojoaca.
Cojoaca. Andrei Cojoaca in Canada, Toronto. Morning time for you.
Yes.
And
8
invariably,
20.
when I interact with the west of India, it is my dinner time and their breakfast or lunch time. So, we take the shortcut. Being an Indian is always namaste. What I love about namaste is it is time neutral. You can say it in morning, evening, and night, and you can welcome people with namaste, and you can say see you again with namaste. So namaste, Andre, and thanks for being a guest on this impromptu interaction and our relationship. Vocally or audibly or in the audio terms goes back nearly 3 years, and I think I have not formally thanked you for that. When I did apply for 12 days to Deming, and it went to you, and then we interacted, and you told me Dr. Mohan, that, are you sure you want to do 12 days to Deming? I said, yes. So he said, it's not possible. I don't think you're going to get through it. So I said, why? Answer, why won't I get through it? So you said, A, did you check what time is it over there when I'm conducting it? I said, no. So he said, it's going to be 3 o'clock in the morning. Are you willing to go through that? I said, 3 o'clock in the morning? I said, yes, I'll go through that. He said, look, in any case, many of the participants don't go through, they don't have the patience or the tolerance to go through 12 days to Deming, and you're taking a very odd hour. Are you sure you want to do it? I said, yes. Then you suggested to me that, look, if you're really sincere about doing 12 days to Deming, understanding Deming, then I have a suggestion for you. And I asked Andre, what is it? He said, contact Balaji S. Reddy. I said, where is Balaji S. Reddy? He said, in Pune. And I said, really? He said, yes. I said, Pune is just 3 hours drive from where I am in Mumbai. And that's how I got involved or got Mr. Balaji Reddy as my mentor, and who is taking me through 12 days of Deming. And we have covered it at probably did the first attrition, but did not get through the 7 day because of other issues. But we have a study group that is studying Deming, 12 days to Deming, and we are on the 10th day, and the 10th day, as you know, has got 4 parts. So we are in part one and part two, and we will cover it up and we'll complete 12 days to Deming. And that is how, Andre, I met Mr. Balaji Reddy, who is a mentor and a dear friend of mine now. And thank you very much for that and for introducing Deming through Balaji Reddy. And he is an amazing person who makes the most complicated things simple with his examples. And most of what I like about Mr. Balaji is his ever charming smile that can brighten your darkest day. So thank you very much, Andre. And we
Entirely
just
my
go
pleasure.
and
And
both of us being in the profession of continuous improvement, you are an agile, lean coach, apart from many other things that you do. It's a standard work. So I got to do my standard work of introducing you. So here we go. I'm sharing screen. Is it visible to you, sir?
not yet. Yes, it's coming up now. Yes.
Okay, let me take it to the slideshow. Let me go to the slideshow. From the beginning, yes, everything has to start from the beginning. That's the podcast you're in, Andre. And this is Dr. M's podcast.
Welcome to Dr. M's podcast. a podcast with a mission to connect continuous improvement professionals across the world.
That, Andrei, is my mission. So, and this is what we would be talking today. It's impromptu, and I contacted you and I said I need to formally thank you. And it was 14th of this month that we had Dr. Deming's birthday, and we said, why don't you talk on this topic, which is called joint work, and whether it is a myth or a need is something that we can talk about. And Dr. Deming was very clear. And I love the way you call him Dr. D, right? So if ever Andrei refers as Dr. D, it is nothing to do with Dr. M. It has got to do with Dr. Deming, right? So
I picked it up from Henry Neave, so it's...
Oh, he also says Dr. D, is it?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much for that info. So we are, I mean, when we interacted and we said, why are you so interested in the joy for work? And Deming, he said, you told me that, look, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is that I'm a people person, respect for humanity and respect for people. I said it gels with me because my sensei Masaki Imai, who actually introduced me to TPS and the continuous improvement perspective that he gave me and which I follow, and especially Toyota production system, the two pillars, one being respect for people. And I said, let's do it. And so you have said that with your cross-functional knowledge on Lean and TPS and Agile practices, you got curious about the work of Deming. I too follow the same path, and I also want to know what Deming is. That's the reason that I'm still doing 12 days to Deming, and you're teaching it. So you're going to help me out in understanding the topic, joy in work. And then you have conducted several courses of study groups of 12 days of Deming, which I'm going through at various level, at C-suite level, and professors across the industries and across the functions. And I'm so glad to hear about it, that people talk about it and they just leave it at when you say Deming, oh, Deming. You know, the way they say, oh, Deming, as if they understand it, but you can't read Out of Crisis and you can't read New Economic, or you can't read Deming. You've got to study it and understand him, and that's what you're going to help us to understand, right? And then you have Toyota next over there, which I know you're going to relate both of them together at some point of time when we interact. And there's another thing that I really liked about you is that you have 30 years in various segments and various fields. That just, I mean, I am amazed at the curiosity that you display in your professional life, the creativity and the amount of knowledge you would have accumulated in various projects that you have been doing. So you're a mystery to me, Andrei, in as much as it's difficult to pronounce your surname, but a mystery to me, so I want to hear more about it. And I'm really curious as to these two. You got these certifications from one from Hillary Clinton, one from George W. Bush, and this photograph with you with I don't know what he was. He was the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, at that point of time.
Yes.
Now tell me one thing. You have kept it. What does this mean to you? I mean, I'm sure it's not the position. Of course, the position matters, and who wouldn't like to have a White House with all these celebrities? But what does this really mean to you, Andre?
So it's first of all, thank you for the presentation. It's usually when somebody presents you, you look bigger than you think about yourself. I see the whole time I've spent, in work as an experience, a journey. And as you know, it's the journey is more important than the destination, generally speaking, and it's all the connections that you make on the way. And particularly what you have in front of you, it's not necessarily for bragging, but those were some examples, if you want, parts of what joy in work means. Because as I mentioned, it's part of working for the US Embassy in Romania was to contribute to different events like presidential visits, congressional delegations, and so on. And it was interesting when these people were coming, it was a very high intense day or couple of days. And one of the common denominators is things for sure were supposed to change. So change was built into all these schedules, all these activities. And to tie it to joy in work is you do your work, you do your part, and suddenly you receive one of these letters, and it's more of a thank you, a kudo, if you want. But these people at their level, they don't have to do it. Yeah. So when you get it is an acknowledgement that you contributed to something. And I think that's one uh, of the things that Dr. Deming was talking about, pride in workmanship. That's how it started, and it transformed morphed into joy in work. And definitely when you receive one of these letters, and it's interesting because the Hillary Clinton one, I received it via mail, snail mail, let's put it that way. And the reason I kept Colin Powell's photo is there was a one-day event, and he was 2.5 hours behind schedule. And he's an important person. I mean, you know, he's not a manager or a VP or whatever in a company. He is the Secretary of State. Yeah. So he was 2.5 hours behind schedule. And the last event on his schedule was to actually stop by the ambassador's residence and thank the people that worked for him that day.
Mm.
So he added another 1.5 hour to his behind the schedule time just to do that, which is a great act of leadership to to be late, but to stop and thank the people that worked for you that day.
Yeah, Andre,
That was one of the sorry.
I'm sorry, what I hear you saying is they they need not have done it. Okay, they need not have.
Nope.
Yeah, but they wanted to do it. It was, should they do it? No, it's not imperative of them to do it. But do they want to do it? And that's what you're going to talk to us about. Wanting to respect the people, and probably the joy that these leaders gave you is something that is quite intrinsic to you. And we're going to talk about it as to how does it fit with what Deming had in mind when he talked about joint work. Uh, is it a myth, or is it a need at this point of time in the world where there's so much of disruption, dystopia, and you can use a lot of adjectives? And so let's talk about it. And I'm going to again thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm going to stop sharing and let's talk about it. Over
Yeah.
to you,
So
Andy.
So first of all, let me thank you for having me on your podcast. It's an honor and a humbling experience given the lineup of people that have been on the podcast with you. Going and we this month on the of October we celebrated Dr. Deming's birthday, and this kind of fits with that theme. And it's interesting because as I said, it started with pride in craftsmanship. So probably that's a concept that for some people, it's hard to digest. What does it really mean to have pride in craftsmanship? And I think he explains it a little bit better in the New Economics. And there's an interesting part where there's a question and an answer about uh, people leaving a company for a higher pay. And the answer to the question is, but I have people that can get a higher pay if they go in another company. So why do they stay? It's kind of thinking it in reverse. It's interesting to see that they stay because they like what they do. They have the opportunity of using their knowledge to build something. And I know you have some psychology background in your pocket, so it has to do with uh, what gives us the brain juices to move forward. And I usually tie to the 12 days because Henry Neave did a great job in the first day uh, of providing us with an activity that um, brings this to life and to a better understanding, which is consider yourself being uh, highly motivated, rewarded for the work that you do. And reward, by the way, I'm not talking about money or anything, but appreciation and acknowledgement of the work that you do. And how would you tackle different aspects of your life, including work? And then consider yourself being in a position where nobody cares about you, you are put down every day, you are treated miserably at work. How would you react? And it's the simple question, how do you like yourself being in a very jolly state and feeling good, or miserable and feeling bad? And definitely you like yourself being jolly and feeling good. So why can't we create environments at work where people have that type of approach, which in turn helps with uh, having them more productive and caring about the work that they do. And I think that's a key that we dropped somewhere on the way. And when we talk about joy in work, is not necessarily putting ping pong tables and having a fridge full of beer and that anybody can grab, or snacks on the sides, which is something that many companies went to. Uh, it's in fact having people feel like they are contributing and doing something. And this is something that Dr. Deming has written in the New Economics, where he says about that if people feel that their contribution, they take their knowledge and do something with it, then definitely that's a fulfillment of having a purpose, having a part into something bigger. So that's how I would look at it in a nutshell.
Yeah, so, you know what? You ask anybody their personal experience, and they would say, exactly like we all think, and that there has to be joy in work, there's to be fun in work, there to do a lot of things, and the whole thing is this is known to people. It's not unknown. But what is it in the environment, or what is it that when you enter a factory or the shop, wherever, uh, you don't get the same feeling. As a matter of fact, across the world, it depends when your weekend is. There's always this thing you get on Sunday, what is called the Monday Blue. Now, what does a Monday Blue
Yeah.
mean? What does a Monday Blue mean? You're so reluctant to get up. You just say, "Oh God, I have to go to the work." And however, on a Friday, which is a weekend for most of you all in the West and Europe, and for us it is Saturday, we are already ready and geared to rush home. Now, what changes in this? What really changes in that? The human being has not changed. There's only one wall and a one gate. The minute you come into one gate, you're reluctant. When you want to get out of that gate, you're the most happy. So philosophically, we understand it. When you said we dropped it, why did we drop it? If it was so precious to each one of us, including the leaders, why did we drop it?
So I think uh, the way business is organized and the way business is kind of change the optics. And it's interesting, if we look at history, we had Taylor with the scientific management that brought us a lot of useful tools in a time where people were on assembly lines and there wasn't too much knowledge work required from them. It was more of, if you want, repetitive muscle memory, uh, attention to following an ABCD type of uh, step by step. So with knowledge work, it's a little bit different because you have to be conscious of your environment. You have to know what changes, and you have to know what decisions to make. You have to be aware of thinking in the moment and thinking, in a specific context. And then you will have to figure out what tools, what methods, what way of doing things I will employ. And that comes from different parts. So if I tie it back to Dr. Deming, it's the system of profound knowledge. They talk about knowledge, and knowledge goes at multiple levels. It goes at the management level. Do they have the knowledge of what drives people? Because if that's part, and some of it comes from psychology, which is the other part of system of profound knowledge. And then it's understanding that the whole organization is a system. So uh, the end product of any organization is not one department, one person, one area. It's the interaction between all these parts that give the end result of any organization's work. Doesn't matter if it's a product or service. So in that context is we have to be conscious of people if we treat them as cogs, and we can see some of these happening these days. We see major layoffs in companies, be it technology or whatnot, and it's tied, even the language that we use. And we have human resources department, we have human capital, but you go, and the language that it's used in the organizations is, we need more resources. So where did the human part got dropped? And then we look at the hiring process, and generally speaking, it's sometimes recycled job postings or job descriptions. And when you go into the organization, the job is a little bit different than it was laid out. And not much attention is given to that. And people are brought in and asked to do different things, sometimes to use what they know. And there is a difference. You use what you know after you understand the organization, or you use what you know right away. And when the latter happens, it's actually you are alienating the organization because you bring your own ways without any consideration for the context that you are dropped in. And that's gonna stir up some bad consequences. So it's an interesting time we are in today. And the other part that happens with the layoffs that we see, it's usually the knowledge that was built in the organization with those people goes out the door as well. So who's gonna maintain the knowledge? And unfortunately, with the push for faster, more and faster, one of the things that get dropped is documenting things. So I've been in organizations where you look, systems are built, but there's no documentation. And sometimes it's built by people that are no longer there. So if you have an issue, you have to reverse engineer whatever was there. The costs are very high to do that. So sometimes we look only at the initial cost, where is, we can save some money if we let go of 10% of the workforce, or 3%, or 2%, or 1%, or whatever the case might be. But we don't look at the other costs that will incur in time. And it's it's not in courses, manuals, or any other part of education where this is talked about. It's only these initial costs that we talk about. So it's all tied, and think about how people think about an organization if they've been working for that organization, and then suddenly the organization drops them off. Even the people that are still in the organization, and that's not the usual thing that happens, will start to question, am I going to be next? And when you have that think about your head, how are you going to perform? Sometimes, maybe I work harder and people will notice me and not drop me. But then I know somebody that was doing a great job, worked hard, and they got dropped. So what's going to be my motivation to still be a contributor and a high performer? And these are things that I don't know if they are taken into consideration when we create environments, cultures in organizations. And you were tying it, you mentioned that I love to look across different things, including Lean and Toyota. And we have these Japanese terms that we talk about, which is monozukuri, building things, through hitozukuri, which is building people. Because when I started, and it's funny, the last picture in the presentation, being in the US government, one of the things that I got exposed to was, for the first time in 2000, on Scrum, which is an agile practice. And that was referring inspiration from the new development, new product development game, a paper by Nonaka and Takeuchi. They were referring manufacturing. So what does manufacturing has to do with software development? And that's what put me on the path of, it's something interesting there. That's how I discovered, if you want, Lean, and that's how I try to go to the sources of that information, which was Toyota, and that's where I've never found direct references in the sense of here's what Dr. Deming told us to do, but I found we are thankful for what Dr. Deming taught us, and it's one of the things that I heard the first time, which is I said, "Oh, you're manufacturing, you're building cars," and I said, "No, we build people." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's weird. How do you build people? Because we are not in the age where we produce robots." And I said, "No, no, no. We have to build people with the right knowledge, the right attitude, the right uh, approaches, so then they can build the cars for us." It's not one thing, and we are used by education to look at one thing at a time, but which is how we function, but we cannot do it without thinking of the broader, larger view and the context.
Hey, you had Shingo's son, Ritsu Shingo, right? As your sensei. He also, you got coached under him, right?
I had the privilege of having a couple of discussions with Ritsuo-san and uh, being part of several of his master classes. And he was, I mean, the interesting thing with some of these people like Shingo-san, like even Norman Bodek, I wrote at one point to his publishing house. I was interested at that time in the Harada method, and I just wrote to a generic email, and I got an email back directly from him. The same thing with Ritsuo Shingo. It's you ask a question, and then he was telling you, okay, let's talk about this, and you go like, you mean me and you? Yeah. So uh, it's how they are open and approachable, and they do it because of the passion and the belief that what they're doing is right.
Did he ever talk to you about Deming?
Sorry?
Did Ritsu Shingo ever talk to you about Deming?
No, and that's another interesting point, because he was asked at one point about Dr. Deming, and he said, "I don't know anything about Dr. Deming. I heard of it. I know we were influenced by his teachings, but I don't know anything." And then uh, he was asked, "Okay, let's go to through the 14 points." And that's when Shingo-san was going like, "Oh, this is what we do, and this is how we do it. This is what we do, and these are the things that contribute to that." So it was interesting to see it's baked into their behaviors rather than it's this script on the wall that we follow. So I think that's we had previously a discussion, and I heard this many times. I heard the question, and I've seen it on LinkedIn many times. What would Dr. Deming in this case? What tools he will employ? What methods he will employ? And I heard people saying that, Dr. Deming talks about a lot of things, but he doesn't give us the tool to do it. And if we go back to the Japanese, and I think that's where the difference comes, what they say is we look up to what Dr. Deming taught us. And if you look, he actually taught some what we call now very simple things like the systemic view, and if you think about it, so what's the big deal? But customer first principles come from that systemic view. The fact that people have to understand that, and this is something that Dr. Deming talks in his books. He says if the worker understands what others are doing in the organization, how their particular work is impacting or getting impact by others, then that's how they develop this pride in workmanship, because you're a contributor. So it's that type of joy that we are talking about. It's not the joy from getting perks and things like that. It's feeling yourself like you're doing something, and that thing, it's appreciated and it's seen appropriately in the context of the work that it's done.
Something I think Deming has written 2 popular books, but the other papers, etc. But there's more books and more literature written about Deming than what Deming himself wrote. The best I know, I'm a student of Deming, and you are teaching Deming. So, there are certain things which I still fail to understand. The reason being that there is a difference in the way I understand things, the Eastern way of being an Indian. And I'm not saying that has anything to do with the West, because I learned a lot of things from the West and Europe, etc. The whole thing is, correct me if I'm going wrong. People say that, oh, he talked about systems. He said that, look, understand the system, but he never said that he's competing with Arkoff or anybody. He never said he was an expert in that. Psychology, he never said that he's an expert in psychology. I'm talking about Deming. He never said he was an expert in theory of knowledge. And he never said that he was an expert in even variation. He gave it to his mentor. So, I mean, he did. For Walter Schott, what that you pronounce that, or PDSA rather than that. And he was a little upset, I heard, that when it is a PDCA. So he never said he was an expert in all these. But he said, I mean, the best I know, and I don't know whether I would understand him better than you all have already understood him, but I don't know. The thing is, that was a philosophy. That was a way of looking at things through various prisms, and asking the question why. And since Sensei Masaki Mayo was my sensei, he would never give me an answer, and he would always say, "Ask why." And that's what clicked with me when I'm reading Deming, I'm studying Deming, and methodologies are required, but asking why, I mean, to us, it makes a lot of sense. However, to our senseis, we never ask why, because they always ask us to do first, and then they will probably tell us why, because it was more of a self-realization, like the way Sensei Masaki might taught us, right? They never taught us the methodology. They just told us the principles, and we had to do it ourselves. There are different ways of doing it. Now, coming back to what we are talking about, joy of work, joy in work. I have a problem in that. One is, and create joy in work. Is that what Deming said? I don't know. Second is finding joy in work. Okay. Now, I find that's a contradiction that I am in, and I want you to help me out. And I'm sure Balaji, at some point of time, when we finish 12 days to Deming, I'll ask him the same question: is which is significant to me as an individual, is finding joy at work. for an organization is creating joy of work. They're two different things, meaning two different perspectives. So Deming was not probably looking at it from an individualistic point of view or an individual point of view. He was looking more from the organization point of view. Am I right? Or am I wrong?
Okay, now you get me to the point where I would like to do an exercise that I usually do with everybody.
Game on. Game on.
Whenever, and I would like to share it because it's powerful, and it can be done in different ways. So
Go ahead. I mean, you can share the screen. You want?
no, I don't have to share anything. It's a very simple one. So can you
Okay.
describe what you see? Just describe what you see.
Memo book, block notes. It's
Okay.
It's a notebook.
Okay.
Uh,
What else?
No, it has got spiral on top, black spiral on top. It's got blue color at the base. The reds seems obvious to me because of staples, etc. And blame it on my eyes. I can't read what is down. There's something written down, and yeah, and I don't know. There is some emoji right on top. I don't know what it means. So that's what I see.
Okay. So I have no idea what you're talking about because all I see it's a very I don't even know how to describe this cardboard color. There is no writing, there is no blue color, there is no emoji, there is no red, there is no writing on it. So this is interesting because generally speaking, when we have discussions, is about perspectives. So everybody's looking at something from a different perspective. You ask the question, am I right or am I wrong? It's not about right and wrong because we are looking at the same thing. It's just we look from different sides and it's different. So I'm right about what I'm saying. You are right about what you are saying. It's not that we are wrong. We don't have the complete view. And usually when I do this, for instance, with engineers and designers, they talk about, oh, I look at that spiral. I don't think it's created right, because if you don't take care of this, you might poke your finger. And then you go to creative people and they say, I'm more interested on what's written on the pages of the notebook. And if I put it like this, describe what you see. And they give you other description. But the whole idea is, how can we get this all around discussion? And I think this is what I try to do. You say that I teach Deming and that I teach the 12 days. I never thought of it that way. I always build these study groups and I build them for a different reason. It's because I wanted to bring together people with different backgrounds and different perspectives to look at the same material and see what comes out of it.
Hmm.
And this is something that Dr. Richard Clayton and Oscar Van Huys used for their format of weekly talks. I think they labeled it Dialogic Innovation Learning System, which is people discuss about the same thing, and it's new nudging. And the part that I always like about Dr. Deming's work is people always pick something else of what he said. Doesn't make it right or wrong. It's an interpretation of the philosophy. And it can, sometimes it creates, if it's not guided right, and if it's rushed in the interpretation, if people are biased and just want a confirmation, like I think there is a saying on the internet that people attribute to Dr. Deming, which is in God we trust, everybody else brings data. He would have never said that. And he didn't say that. So the same thing, it's right or wrong. It's it's not right or wrong. It's we have some, our motivation as human beings come from different uh, places. And I mentioned to you before when we were discussing, it's interesting when you hire a person in an organization, are they motivated and incentivized? So probably they are, because they want the job, and they have their own intrinsic motivation to get it. It's either to provide for their family, maybe there is something they want to do or it's an organization they would like to work in for various reasons, and they would be incentivized because they negotiated a salary. So if we look at organizations, they have programs to incentivize and motivate people. So they already come through the door like that. Why don't we have the attention put into maintaining that? And of course, not two people have the same motivation, but we know that we get our brain juices from different things. One of them being the fact that we are acknowledged for what we are doing, that we are contributors. Yeah. So what I do is something that gets recognized. And by the way, when I say recognition, I'm not necessarily saying a monetary reward or whatever, but a praise for the work well done. And of course, we are in environments where we are humans, we make mistakes. And sometimes we make the mistakes because of us. I have a bad day. I came to work and I've been involved in a fender bender accident, so my head it's not at work. I might make a mistake. And sometimes it comes from the state that you are in, and sometimes it comes from the organization that allows those mistakes to happen because the processes were badly designed and there is no way to for people to self-correct or see that something is wrong before they release it. Or we build so much inspection that I don't care. I have to produce my quota, whatever that is. So I'll just push through to make sure I make it, because if I do a mistake, somebody will catch it down the road. So when we talk about the organization creating an environment where people find joy in work, it comes from different levels. Is how you treat people. One common denominator for Deming in Japan versus anyone else who went there is that he treated people with respect. So if you look, when there are photographs of his trips in Japan, he's greeted by people, by lineups of people with flowers and things like that. And it's from the fact that he was respectful to people, no matter their level, no matter who they were, what they were. And it's probably the little thing that starts to change a culture, starts to change behaviors. Because at the end of the day, uh, uh, I think this was put like this by Nigel Thurlow. He was saying that we look at Lean, we look at Agile. It's all about behaviors. It's all about driving, changing behaviors. And if we look at it from that perspective, is for me to get a certain behavior, what do I have to do? And you can organize things at the workplace in such a way that it's done. So, I've seen terrible places by by certain accounts, oh, that's not a place where you want to work. But then you find some people that love working there, and they love working there not because the place is great, but because their boss is great. And they created an environment for their people, and they created an environment that protects them from all the craziness that goes around and deems that place as a bad place to work.
Andrei, I have a small question. I mean, I'm just reflecting on my
Sure,
mind. And,
sure.
I've been saying this, but let's look at it, since we talked about perspective, let's look at it from this perspective of one, joint work from an organization perspective, and joint work from an individual human perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Now, joint work from a workplace perspective, organization perspective, Deming, all what he said, all the 14 points, your deadly diseases, your obstacles, all are interrelated, interconnected. You can't have joy in work if there is fear, if there's no consistency, but all that is understood. Okay, that is what I would say, creating joy of work, right? Or
Yeah.
that's for the organizations to create, right?
Yep.
Now, if I flip it out on the individual side, I said, where do I find joy of work? Now, I'm making a subtle difference over there. What the organization should do, la 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 la. He has not told me that the methods, that's fair enough. You can ask why and create it. If Toyota has done it, I'm saying Toyota because you said Toyota, but Toyota has done the same thing in North America also. How they do it, again, I'm not getting into that, but all what I'm trying to say is that is the corporate perspective where you want to apply Deming. And the other one that I'm saying is, as an individual, finding joy in work. Okay, I'm not talking about finding joy as in doing whatever you want socially. No, finding joy in work, because you have the Uncle Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So there are certain things that my basic conditions have to be satisfied before. So where do I find it and still get the joy of work? So way back, and I've been saying that in many of my episodes, that way back in 1977, I was fortunate, like I was in many occasions in my life so far, to have met Peter Drucker. And when Peter Drucker was talking about it, but what I caught on to him, which he was emphasizing in Bangalore at that point of time, was I was 27 years old, a young business management trainee. What I heard him saying is, don't expect large organization to hold your finger and motivate you. He said, develop auto-motivation is what he said. He said, develop within yourself this thing to motivate yourself. And that's one message that I have carried through. Okay. The second person who really influenced me was Stephen Covey, whom I did have an occasion to meet before his tragic accident. Which I'm really believe in, is that circle of influence and circle of concern. So when I'm talking about create, I can brag whatever you want to say that organization should be this, organization should be this, organization, that comes under the circle of concern. The circle of influence is when I can create something, a joy, while I'm doing work for myself. So I want your perspective as a people-centric man, a person who has been studying Deming, and what you have told me is what is appropriate and what is, there's nothing like correct and not correct, which I strongly believe, being a clinical psychologist and understanding transaction analysis. Even Dr. Eric Burns said that it was not correct or right, it is appropriate or not appropriate in a particular situation, because many things that is done in Europe, you cannot do it in India. You can't even hug and kiss both the cheeks in India, you'll get slapped. So there are certain things that is appropriate, there are certain things that's not appropriate in a particular environment. So to sum it up with your expertise, and I'm sure this is not the end of our discussion. We're going to discuss this further because I'm a curious person, and Sensei Masakima was a different. See, he's like a father figure to me. The question before us as individuals is we can criticize, we can do whatever you want. As a matter of fact, I often write whether it is a truth that makes a man great or the man that makes a truth great. I mean, you said that it is, you have this confirmation bias. You say something and said, this was also said by Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, and then you get a signature of Mahatma Gandhi, Deming, Juran, what have you. And that is it. You can often see on LinkedIn, I'm saying this because my sensei said so. As a matter of fact, yes, your sensei said so, so that should be correct, right? Now, all what I'm saying is, we have an option. Do we have an option or not? Is something for both of us appropriate, not appropriate? Create job, create joy in work, finding joy in work. That's a dilemma that I am in.
So I think this is a longer discussion, but to just keep it short, definitely each and every one of us has a different kind of what brings them joy in work. So, some people take a particular job because it's well paid. And at some point they get grinded out and they are looking, and that's when you see people changing careers or things like that. It's because they hit a point where that crave for money, it's either fulfilled or it's taking a too big a toll. And then sometimes they use their own intrinsic motivation to look over these kind of things. Still, it catches up with them. On the other hand, you have people that like to do certain things or things in a certain way. That's where it surprisingly, yes, I can get myself motivated with different things. And yes, I can find motivation in things that I do at work. And that comes with the individual. I've seen people that do repetitive work and they like it. It's how their brain works, what gives them joy to do this over and over again because they are good at it and they can do it faster than anyone else. And that's their motivation. And then you have people that I cannot do the same thing over and over again. I go nuts. So I need to do something else at some point. And this is where you have to marry it with what the organization does. And sometimes it comes down to the role of the manager of that group or of that particular work, which is to understand what those people thrive on. So one of the teams that I worked with Point had exactly this thing where people were assigned to do a specific work for the whole day. And there were people that loved it and people that hated it because they love to change things, but nobody cared. However, when we mixed it and we said, okay, because the load on this work varies throughout the day, so let's create two positions or morph two positions in somebody that would move according to where the load goes.
I like
the
what you
people
said.
that
Sorry. Go ahead.
and the people that thrived on it, on changing what they were doing throughout the day, were the first to jump on it and they loved it. So you took people that were probably 3 out of 5 days feeling miserable because they had to do work that they didn't like to do. Now they could do stuff in such a way that they loved the whole 5 days. They got to do something that they loved, how to mix their day. But it comes down to, it's this fine balance, because I won't be able as an organization to match exactly what drives you, what you get joy in work, but I can make things that you find joy in such a way that you would love to come to work. And it's go ahead.
Andrew, you know what strikes me right now with Dr. W. Edwards Deming is, and you and many of you all, is at the age of 93, with an oxygen cylinder, he would come and to deliver his lectures, right? At the age of 93. Did he do it because he had to do it? Or he do it because he wanted to do it? Was it because of joy of work?
I think it's beyond that, because first of all, he had the joy, but he also said, and it's something that Henry repeated as well, which is, once you get to know a thing, you have the obligation to pass it on. So some people find that this is so valuable and it's so important and it makes such a difference for your life and for other people's life that you have to talk about it. You have to do it. It's an obligation bestowed upon yourself by yourself, because you see the value of it. So, I think some of it comes from it, but definitely Dr. Deming tried to pass on to people a certain way of thinking, because he knew it would make a difference. And I think that's what everything comes down to. And it comes down to something else that you mentioned yourself, which is you are a curious person. So if we think of us as human beings, when do we do the most in terms of learning? It's when we are kids. And why do we do it? Because we are curious. So, and you mentioned I've been in different areas and I looked at different things. It's because I was curious, and I was curious not necessarily, so, oh, what is there? What is there? It's I've seen a link and things coming together. And sometimes, in different industries, people are people. It doesn't matter the industry. Principles are universally valid. It's just sometimes we make limitations of ourselves. Oh, this only works in manufacturing. Oh, this is something that only works in software development. Oh, this is something that only works in healthcare. Yes, specific type of work, it's done there. But the principles that drove the things to be done in a certain way can be universally applicable. And I think that's something that Shingo-san was always talking about, which was everybody was asking, so, oh, you took the knowledge from this, because he was involved in 9 startups in Toyota, if I recall correctly. And each and every time the question was, so what were the tools or the methods that you took from this plant to the other plant? And I said, I didn't. What do you mean? And he said, I went there, I looked at what they are doing, how they are doing, what is the context, what are the tools that they have at hand, and try to make those work for them. So I think that's where the difference comes into place. If you are curious and respectful, because it comes to respect for people, respect for that particular environment, is you get curious and you try to make it work for them. Else, we talk about square pegging a round hole.
So, join work, myth or
Join work.
myth or a need in the workplace?
So I think it's definitely a need, and Dr. Deming was advocating, and my experience is the same. When people enjoy what they're doing or they enjoy the team they are part of, then productivity, quality, everything gets ramped up. And it's not necessarily major changes, to tools, methods, and things like that. It's creating an environment where people like to come to work, they care about the work that they do, and then definitely the quality and the performance in that place change positively.
Thank you, Andrei. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, sir.
There are many more questions in my mind, which I'm sure this is the first time that you have come to my episode. There are many more to follow and many more questions to you. And all the viewers of this episode, you're welcome to raise your questions on my YouTube channel, on my LinkedIn, and Andrei will respond to you and we can interact on this further. Thank you very much. And I'm going to stop recording.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Again,
Namaste.
thank you very much. Entirely my pleasure.